Hi guys, and welcome to a little extra episode of Not Once for Yes. Don't worry, this isn't your next episode. We're not trying to become YouTubers. This is just a little bonus that we're doing because the world has gone crazy right now. It's scary and it's confusing and it's incredibly stressful, and we all know how important it is to keep a cool head and remain mindful. But that is easier said than done. I'm sure we're all feeling it. But what I do when I need to get a bit of headspace is I go outside. Now, fortunately, that's something we still can do at the moment. We can go to places where there aren't many people. We're not going to see anybody. Getting outside in nature is really good if you can. We're very fortunate in our local environment to have some really good spaces that we can get out to. And usually when I'm stressed, I head straight for the woods. So that's what we're going to do today, because it just so happens that our local stomping ground has a couple of ghost stories as well, which is a bit of a bonus. We've been meaning to share these with you guys for a while, but it's not quite the right format to put into one of our main episodes, and that's why we're doing this little video today. We know that a lot of you may not be able to get out anywhere at all, so we wanted to bring you with us on this little adventure. We're not off to a brilliant start because, as you can probably hear, it's pouring with rain. It wasn't when we left, it was lovely.
It was supposed to be lovely weather today.
It really was.
Yeah, it's not. So we're trying to brave the worst of it, and we're going to head out in a minute and hopefully show you some of the interesting haunted places in our local woods.
And some of the nice woodland and countryside. It's going to be a bit of a muddy ramble. We've got our map ready to go. I should have bought a map case because now this is going to get horribly soggy, but there we go. We were so hopeful when we came out this morning we didn't bring much in the way of waterproof stuff, but never mind. We do hope you enjoy this little adventure and that the camera doesn't get too soggy, and I hope you're all well. So join us on this little ramble into the woods. Enjoy.
I know it's not exactly the jungle, but this should give you some idea of what we're traipsing through to take you on this little outing.
We keep having to pop out of the woods and walk in the fields that are next to the woods, just because it's so wet. Some of the paths are almost impassable. I think you can see the little pond there, which is lovely. And believe it or not, this is a lot better, this muddy track that you can see here, than what we were trying to negotiate in the woods. So again, there would be some fantastic views up here if it wasn't all covered by mist and rain. But it's still got its own kind of beauty. Wow, I know I've been joking about the rain, but this is literally a swamp. It's the kind of thing you'd expect to find a dinosaur in. Or maybe that's just my brain. I just really love dinosaurs. I don't think you can see it, but the little pheasant's racing across the field. There he goes. Woo! Hello, pheasant. Off he goes. And Fitz is sporting the good old classic British Army surplus poncho, which may look like a walking tent, but it is incredibly useful. That one's mine, he's stolen it. But the best thing about it is that your rucksack and everything fits underneath it, and it keeps you all lovely and toasty dry, even if your family do just take the mickey out of you endlessly for wearing it. I don't care. It keeps me nice and dry. So Fitz just told me off because apparently that wasn't a he pheasant at all, it was a lady pheasant. The lady pheasants are the dull brown ones, and the male pheasants have sort of brightly coloured plumage because they like to show off and strut their funky stuff. But unfortunately, even with my contact lenses in, my eyesight wasn't good enough to see anything other than the fact that it was pheasant shaped. But I stand corrected. This mud does make it really easy to track things, even if you're an absolutely shocking tracker like I am, but I'm pretty sure those are deer tracks, or deer slots as they're called, because they've got the two hooves. So the mud is good for something. You do quite often see some lovely little muntjac deer in these woods. Sometimes they'll just run across your path and say hello. I wonder if we'll be lucky enough to see some today. So over there and over there are both pieces of what's left of Rockingham Forest, which was established in the 11th century to be an exclusive hunting ground for the Norman king. No peasants allowed. And we are heading over yonder. If I ever get the opportunity, I do enjoy getting a brew on outside, if I possibly can. It's a bit of a treat. So I brought my little gas stove with me today. His name is Bernard Bunsen, because why not? I do like to name my belongings, my kits. Yeah, that's a little bit weird. It's so quiet out here. I mean, it's usually pretty quiet when I come out here, to be honest, especially when I come up this far. I don't really see many people, but it's eerily quiet today. It's a bit apocalyptic, to be honest, but I'm going to just try and enjoy the sounds of nature and the sound of the rain. I'll get me brew on. And we have a boil. Get us some coffee going. Can't remember which flavour coffee this is. I think it might be chocolate orange. Quite fitting for our birthday.
Well, things didn't quite go to plan. It is peeing it down, and me being the clumsy oaf that I am, I managed to fall over and not quite injure myself, but I'm now something akin to Swamp Thing. We're just gonna head off home, I think, and return later to finish filming what we've got in store for you. So hopefully it's not too long a wait.
Oh, we've made it home, but I think it's safe to say the mud on the route out has taken its toll. Look at this. I am going to have to chuck all this straight in the washing machine. I think I need to chuck me in the washing machine, to be honest. We're back out today and we're giving it another go, and today's weather couldn't be more different. Although it's a little bit chilly, it's glorious sunshine, which is really lifting our spirits. We've just done the first slog up a hill and we're well on our way, but it was worth it because look at this view now the mist is lifted. And there are some slightly fun bits to be negotiated as well. That's fun. Well, we're well on our way now, and as you can hear, I'm having to yell over the rather roaring wind. We've done the first slog over a long muddy field and we've got another one to go, but over there in the distance you can see one of our destinations for the day, Lyveden New Bield. We've had so many storms this autumn, winter, and even now into spring that we've got trees down all over the place like this one right here. We're getting there. There's another shot of our destination just over yonder. over there you get our first proper look through a gap in the hedge at Lyveden New Bield. It looks tiny on the camera, but it's pretty impressive even from this distance.
We'd been getting so many teasing glimpses of Lyveden from afar, across a distant field, through a hedge, that when we rounded a corner of thick hedgerow, and there it was in all its windswept ruinous glory, it was a bit of a surprise. We had intended to set the camera on a tripod and tell you the story of Lyveden in situ, with the building in the background, but as soon as we arrived we knew this wasn't going to work. The building sat atop a rise that dropped away to reveal the valley below, which would have afforded the inhabitants magnificent views, but it also meant the site was completely exposed to the howling wind, which had been picking up all day and by now was roaring across the site. Trying to record audio here would be a disaster, so instead we had a welcome break on a bench and watched the building for a while before exploring, soaking up the very noticeable atmosphere. The empty windows beckoned the eye, and more than once one or other of us thought we caught a swift movement flitting across the open spaces, but maybe it was just a trick of the light.
It may look like the building has fallen into ruin over the 400 years it's been standing, but in fact it hasn't. It was just never finished in the first place. Lyveden New Bield was the vision of Sir Thomas Tresham, a wealthy landowner of Northamptonshire in the 16th century. He was also a devout Catholic during the reign of the Protestant Queen Elizabeth I. In 1559, Elizabeth passed the Act of Uniformity, partly to try and unify the country's religious practices after years of religious extremism, and partly amidst her fears of the Catholic supporters of her rival, Mary Queen of Scots. This Act of Parliament meant that everyone was required to adhere to her new version of the Protestant religion and attend Church of England services on Sundays and holy days. Those who didn't were fined, and the fines and punishments became more and varied as time went on, with Catholic Mass being banned, and anyone trying to convert another to Catholicism found guilty of treason. Sir Thomas Tresham, however, refused to give up his faith, and as a result, he incurred heavy and repeated fines and even imprisonment. It seems, though, that these punishments simply made him even firmer in his belief and religious dedication, and during his imprisonment he came up with the plans for a building dedicated to his faith, which would stand as testament to it, a beacon for all his fellow believers and a place of religious reflection. That building was Lyveden New Bield, although it wasn't only the building that we can see here today. The project also involved a meticulously landscaped garden with a moated orchard and a mile-long labyrinth, and a manor house named Lyveden Old Bield. Every aspect of this creation was imbued with religious symbolism. The floor plan of the lodge is even cruciform in design. When he was released from prison, he started building his vision. But even as it was brought to life, he was plagued with mounting debts from heavy fines. Unfortunately, he was never to see his plans finished, as the lodge was still under construction when he died in 1605. All his estates passed to his son, Francis Tresham, but he also inherited his father's debts, and work on the lodge came to a halt. In November of the same year, Francis Tresham found himself implicated in the gunpowder plot by Guy Fawkes and was imprisoned in the Tower of London. He died from an infection just a few months after his father, and Thomas's lodge stood unfinished and forgotten, a mysterious and enigmatic skeleton alone in the middle of the rolling countryside. From a distance, you might not realise just how unfinished the building was, but up close it's clear that there were never any windows, doors, roofs or floors in the lonely shell. Which makes the paranormal sightings here very strange indeed, as multiple visitors have reported seeing the figure of a man in the upper bay windows. Some see him standing in the window and walking away. Others have even described the figure in detail, recounting a worried-looking man with a beard, peering out of the window before moving out of view. The thing is, of course, that there is no floor to the rooms this window belongs to. In fact, there are no floors anywhere in the building at all, and possibly never have been. So there's no way anybody can be peering out of an upper floor window. One of my friends, who's a keen photographer, was out here taking photographs of the building one day and had one of these upper bay windows in frame. Her camera flashed up a warning telling her movement had been detected. Confused, she checked the shot. Nothing moving. Nothing that even could be moving. She tried again, and again the camera said, "Motion detected." Of course, this was a camera she was used to, and this wasn't a known malfunction, so she came away very confused about what the camera may have been picking up, because it certainly wasn't something she could see with her own eyes. Had this been a balmy, warm summer's day, we could have stayed watching the building and waiting for the movement in the windows that we were almost sure would eventually happen. But this was definitely not a warm summer's day. The sun was starting its descent in the sky, the chill wind was seeping into our bones, and we had a good few kilometres to walk back to the car. But our adventure wasn't quite over yet. We had another destination to visit, so we didn't linger too long, and we were soon heading back out across the open field of sticky mud to find a haunted wood. Well, trust us to be getting to the haunted wood just as the sun's starting to go down, and we're losing the light. Okay, in we go. Okay, so the map was a little bit misleading as to where the entrance to the woods were, but we found it eventually, only we found it rather later than we thought we would. So, the sun's starting to go down, we're losing the light, we're in the haunted woods. Legend tells that the locals of yore would avoid this area after dark because of the ghost stories associated with the place. You can easily see why people would get creeped out in here walking around after dark. It's so quiet up here, and all you can hear is the wind creaking in the trees above me, and it is quite eerie. So the ghost story that's associated with these woods involves a grave. Supposedly somewhere in these woods there is a soldier's grave, and that soldier belonged to the very famous Black Watch.
Legend has it that somewhere in these woods there is an unmarked grave of a soldier, and if that legend is to be believed, that soldier is a member of the Black Watch. The Black Watch is still famous today, and the infantry battalion descended from it still exists, although now it's part of the 3rd Battalion Royal Regiment of Scotland. The Black Watch are known for being fierce, proud, loyal, and quite frankly hard as nails. By all accounts, the British have got into a fair few fights throughout history that wouldn't have turned out quite so well if it were not for the Black Watch getting involved. But we need to go right back to the very roots of the Black Watch, back to the 18th century. Our story starts with the Jacobite rebellions, a series of revolts in Scotland intended to restore the Catholic James II and the Stuart dynasty to the British throne. In the wake of the first of these uprisings in 1715, 6 infantry units were raised from loyal and trustworthy Highlanders in order to police the fighting and raiding between clans. Some say that the dark tartan of their uniform and their task as watchers and wardens of the Highlands was what gave them their name, the Black Watch. By 1739, 4 more units had been raised, and the king decreed that all companies should be joined together as a single line infantry regiment. Part of this decree was that the men who joined should be exclusively Scottish natives, and none other. For their part, the Scots who joined the Black Watch did so on the understanding that they wouldn't be sent abroad to fight. But in 1743, the regiment received orders to march to London for inspection by the king, and en route, rumours began to abound that the intention was to ship them out to the West Indies. At that time in history, this was thought to be more or less a death sentence, and ruffled feathers were not smoothed when the king didn't even appear to inspect them after all, and in fact wasn't even in the country. The soldiers were left waiting, and, in the dark, to the real reason behind them being removed from the Highlands. After being left waiting and wondering for some time, the proud Scotsmen had had enough. This was not what they had signed up for, or been led to believe was the terms of their enlistment. Over 100 of them decided to take matters into their own hands, and left London under the cover of dark to march back to their homeland. Unfortunately, they wouldn't make it home safe and sound. They were followed and eventually tracked down right here in part of Rockingham Forest. According to some versions of the tale, they were offered a pardon were they to surrender, but they chose to stand their ground and fight to return to their country instead. Eventually, though, they were surrounded. One soldier was shot where he stood, and the rest were rounded up and marched back to London, where they were tried by court-martial, and the 3 ringleaders executed. The soldier that was shot in the Northamptonshire woods was apparently buried where he fell, and his tale lives on, by virtue of a small grassy mound known as the soldier's grave. The tale of that dark day in May of 1743 has lingered on through the years, and locals would avoid the soldier's grave in the woods, especially after dark. But some who were brave, or perhaps foolish enough to pass this way, encountered the apparition of a soldier, cloaked in shadow, with the ghostly sound of bagpipes floating eerily on the breeze.
There's a path leading into the woods behind me. I don't know whether the audio from the camera has picked any of it up, but I keep hearing a bird scarer going off on the neighbouring farms, and you really could be mistaken for thinking it was the sound of musket fire when your head's full of ghost stories. I'm not sure you're even really going to be able to see on here, but there's a gap in the hedge over there that kind of marked the halfway point from where we've been today. Now heading back to the car. It's not the shortest walk, I'll be honest. The sun's going down quite rapidly now, and we're heading that way. Not too far to go now. The car's sort of just beyond that tree line, so a little bit of a way to go yet, but oh man, this view, it just gets me every time. So there you are, guys. That was basically how I spent my birthday, and very nice it was too, despite the wind and the rain and the mud.
And the marching.
And the route march. But it was definitely worth it. We do hope you enjoyed it. I know it's not our usual fare, but with everything going on at the moment, we just wanted to do something a little bit different, a little bit extra to put out there. I know a lot of you are stuck at home indoors and you perhaps can't get out. We've been very lucky that at the moment we can go outside, as long as we're well away from people, which, as you will have been able to see from the video, we were well away from anybody. Yeah, we took social distance into the extreme. We were kilometres away from people at most of the points of that. We literally were. And you know, it was a nice trip despite all the weather and the marching, and I hope you enjoyed the ghost stories within that. Obviously we are having to self-isolate as well. Fitz is classed as at risk, so we are being very careful. Like I said, we're very lucky to be able to get outside in nature, but it is going to have somewhat of a knock-on effect on our what we had planned for our future episodes. Hopefully it won't impact our future episodes, but we do need to go away now and rethink what we were going to do. So as you guys know, the next episode we'll get to you as soon as we can. It is partly put together, but with everything that's been going on, it's been quite hard to focus. But in that, we're going to discuss all the paranormal experiments and a bit of investigating we've been doing recently. So that's coming soon, as soon as we can get it to you. Beyond that, unfortunately, we had quite a lot of trips planned that was going to be the basis for the next sort of 2 or 3 episodes. Those cannot now happen.
Well, at least the next one. It depends on how things go, but it does sound like we're going to be on, lockdown for a few months yet. So.
I mean, things are changing by the minute. It's difficult to keep up with things. I mean, by the time you see this video, things might have changed again. But as it stands, what we had planned for an upcoming episode was we'd booked to stay in a haunted hotel, and we were going to use that as a jumping off point for some other locations that were in the locality. Obviously we cannot do that now with Fitz being at risk. I'm not sure that the hotel's going to be open anyway. We are going to lose that money, unfortunately, which I don't begrudge, because I don't want hotels to close, I don't want staff to lose their jobs. That's fine, but we're not going to get it back. So unfortunately that entire trip is kind of gone. But not to worry, we're going to think of other places to go. We're going to try and think of other places to go depending on how strict the lockdown becomes and what places we can find that would potentially be very isolated and away from other people completely.
Yeah, we've got a couple of options that we were thinking about that we could possibly go to. Some quite interesting, couple that we've perhaps been to before but haven't covered in great detail. So
we might be revisiting places because we have come across some pretty isolated places on our travels, which is nice. But yeah, just back to the drawing board. Please bear with us while we do that. If we can get any extra content out again like we've done today, then we will do, because we're aware that a lot of you are stuck at home and that can be hard, and it can be really stressful and worrying and lonely. And please do reach out to us if you're struggling. It's not an easy situation to be in. Everybody is struggling, we are as well. It's a really weird time.
Yeah, and I posted on social media this morning that if you're going stir crazy at home because you can't go out and you just need somebody to vent to, then get in touch. We're around. We can chat on Facebook or Messenger or Skype, even if you just want to sit down and have a coffee and feel like you're having a chat with somebody.
Yeah, we'll be up for that. And use the Facebook group as well, guys. Come over to the Facebook group. Don't feel like you have to keep it on topic and paranormal at the moment. The world's just changed. It's not important anymore. Use it as a community hub. We always wanted it to be that anyway. Share pictures of how you're dealing with the isolation and the lockdown, and we will do the same. And just use it as a place to chat and be kind to each other, and we will get through this. We'll get through this together. I hope you're all safe. I really do. I hope you're managing okay. We are thinking about you all, and just take care, guys, and be kind to each other. How do you lose a pair of boxers in the woods? Seriously. This is not part of our native British wildlife, I promise. I don't think I want to know how those got there. So this right here, and this right here in the distance there, but they're both pieces of what's left of the Rockingham forest.
Sorry.
Talky talk.
Talky talk. Hello everybody. It's much less windy today. It is still bloody cold though. I've chopped many woods.
I have not chopped any woods today. I have done some dig dugging. Diggity dig dugging. Dig dug.